I said, sit up straight. So,
I was very fond of your mother.
everybody did that.
The,
She was a great lady, 98 years old she
oh, wow.
went for.
And you are Dan Wolf, and I am Judy LaPorte doing the interview, and this is Leah McBain and Sally Harris with us here today.
Very good.
And we'll begin with questions. What is your age?
I just had my 78th birthday.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
And where were you born?
I was born in New York City in the middle of quite a snowstorm in 47. So my mother told me.
Yeah, well, I don't imagine you remember.
And we were in New York for about a year and a half.
And then when did you come to Newbury?
Well, we have come to Newbury long before that. My Uncle Max, who owned the Stone Barn, had a farm up in North Newport. And back in those days, you had to have a blood test when you got married.
Yeah.
And Uncle Max wasn't going to wait around for 3 days to get the results. So he went across the border and got married in Nashua and spent his honeymoon at the Seven Hearths, which is now Mount Royal Academy. And the following year he came back and he bought a farm in North Newport. And the family's been going to North Newport since we all argue about it, 38 or 37. And we would come up for the summer, and then we eventually bought a house. I guess I'm running ahead of your question.
No, that's good. That's fine.
So we would come up and we would stay at Uncle Max's house at the Sunny Hill Farm in North Newport. And then during the early 50s, at the time of the polio epidemic, my mother and father wanted us out of Boston. So we came up, we rented a house on Lake Avenue in Sunapee, and eventually ended up buying that house again from my uncle. And then we moved to Newbury in 65. So.
And now, do you have any siblings?
I have one sister. Anky's, I think, 2 years younger than I am. I'd have to look it up on my phone. But she's been here with me, and she owns my mom's house now down in Cressy Point. So, and we've just loved Newbury and been attached to Newbury or Sunapee or Newport since way back before I was even a smile in my mother's eye.
Yeah. What are some of your special memories of this area?
Oh, God. You got a few weeks? I mean, I can go back to picking raspberries at my uncle's farm up in North Newport. He used to sell raspberries to the Woodbine Cottage, and we would get a nickel a box for every box that we picked. And, you know, so things went on for that. I water skied. I learned to water ski. We water skied in the Frank Morse ski school.
Danny, can you talk a little bit more about the ski school? I don't know anything about that.
Oh, the ski school was a great thing. We had moved to Lake Avenue, and I started out as a young kid handling the lines. They would have shows every Sunday. Most of them were up in Sunapee Harbor, but they'd do one or two in Newbury. And Frank ran a ski school out of Dewey Beach and taught people how to water ski, aquaplane. And then we would put on a show. They had a jump that they would drag down, so you'd jump. And I was in the clown act. That was just always me being a clown. Catherine Holmes was skiing in the ski show. We did pyramids. I think Catherine was on my shoulders at one point, and we had 6 people going around. So it was a fun thing. and it was a good way to learn how to ski. I learned how to do turnaround skis down there, and Steve McGrath was with me. I don't know if I mentioned that. I'll start to bring you back to memories. Bob Buswell and the Cavicchios,
Yeah.
Bob and Ray Cavicchio.
And the shows were wonderful, weren't they?
And I'd go out with a little tin can and pass the hat. It was all what you wanted to put in the can. So it was, the summers up here were wonderful.
Now,
It was ultimate freedom. If you had a boat, and I had a little, I don't remember even what kind it was, but it was probably an 8 or 9, 10-foot boat and had a 7.5 horsepower motor on it. And we just went. We'd go to our friend's house. That was, until you got to be 16 and could get a license. Actually, you got a license at 15 and a half back then. That was our mode of transportation all around the lake. And we get down here every so often. Oh, and we used to have roller skating in Sunapee Harbor. And there was a rink where you went inside and outside. There was a gentleman named Larry Bonner who owned the Beacon Motel up there where they've got the garages now being...
in Mount Sunapee.
Yeah, it's not quite Mount Sunapee
Yeah.
at that point, but yeah. And Larry ran the roller skating rink, and that was an entertainment for the young kids. My parents wouldn't dare go down there because somebody would just, like the snowboarders today, go right over them. So, but
Where did you go to school? You didn't go to school here in Newbury, did you?
no. I went to school in Boston. My family was still living in Boston. But this was always my home. I had some friends in Boston, but it was primarily up here. I would tell my mom, and I got caught on this a couple of times, that I was going over to a friend's house, and I'd take the Vermont Transit up here and spend the weekend with people. And we just, once or twice, Mom called where I was supposed to be, and I wasn't there. Whoa, I remember that. But, so, I mean, it was just a wonderful, wonderful place to grow up.
Did you shop much of any up here? Did your family
Shop?
shop,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, God.
Where did you shop?
We went to Newport. Occasionally you go to Claremont, but I remember back in those days, Mom would dress me up for school, and I had those, what were they, felt or something like that, flannel shorts.
Yeah.
I went to Newport and got all my school clothes there. Len, what was Len's name? Oh, God. It was right down where the bank was. Anyway, we got our clothing there, and we had a party line at the house.
How many were on the party line?
I think there were 4. 844 Ring M. I remember that. So, yeah. And when Newport then had 2 movie theaters, 2 big hotels. I mean, there was the Latches and the Winston Hotel. And as we got older, we spent some more time enjoying the liquid refreshments at the Winston. Winston wasn't as careful on looking for IDs as the Latches. So.
Did you ever come up from Boston for the Winter Carnival?
Oh yeah. Because we were up here skiing.
Oh.
We had an absolutely wonderful man, Henry Allen, who would take care of the house, make sure that the pipes didn't freeze. And he was an RFD carrier rural free delivery back then. He became postmaster in Newport, and he worked at the mountain in the first aid room. And then I had permission. I would get on the bus to Claremont from Boston, and Henry would pick us up. I don't remember my sister coming with me, but yes, and I would spend time with Henry. We'd go bowling in Newport at over Bud's Beverages by the Coronis' store. There was a bowling alley on the second floor.
Wow.
You know, you think that they put the bowling alley on the first floor, but they had the bottling company. They bottled Bud's Beverages. That's Steve Schultz's family. He was a Budnitz. And God, they had cream soda that was, I can remember it today. Yeah, they ran a great operation. So yes, I'd come up here, and I went out with a couple of young ladies from Newport during Winter Carnival, the Patton family, and Annie McIntyre. But we're not going to go there. So, but it was fun.
What was the community like here in Newbury at that point?
There wasn't much. When we moved from Sunapee, we sold the house, and we loved that house. My sister and I loved the house. We weren't excited about our folks moving. And I remember this like it was yesterday. And they kept saying, we're going to finish. The new house is going to be ready. We're going to move over there. And Ankie and I went skiing one day, and this was in '65. And we came home, and there was a note tacked on the door, we've moved to the new house. That was the only way that they would get us there. And I think she put, I don't know, I'm probably making it up, but at that point the refrigerator was emptied and everything else. And
so you had to move.
we had to move, yeah. But I remember there were 408 people that lived in Newbury back then. In Blodgett Landing, there were 3 families that lived year-round. Yes, 3. There was Maud Carlson, the Phil Bourgeois, and Webb Rogers and his family. And those names probably come back to you. And but that was it. There was no school bus that came down there or anything like that. It was it. There was nobody that lived on Bowles Road. I guess they plowed it, but not much else.
Probably didn't plow it
very well.
efficiently.
Well, you know, and there was Crotto's Garage was over here.
Yeah.
That was the Davis family, Harry Davis, and the Crottos, Walt and
Mike.
Ellie. And there was down where the ski shop is now was another Texaco gas station.
Yeah, my father-in-law, LaPorte.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And then there was the general store, which was
that
who was that?
Larson? Or
Larson.
That was Larson.
Larson?
Yes,
Yeah.
Arthur Larson and his wife, and she was the postmaster.
Yeah.
Was it Al Larson, right?
What?
Wasn't it Al
No.
Larson?
Arthur.
Arthur
Arthur
Larson.
Larson, yeah.
He used to make
Joe was the wife.
right, Josephine.
Yeah.
And he used to make barbecued chicken, roasted chicken.
Yeah,
He had,
roasted
they were
chicken.
going,
First time I ever heard of roasted chicken.
Yeah, yeah.
Very good.
It was oh yeah. That was our Sunday treat.
And Dan,
But-
what was down there on the waterfront? Because I remember sort of derelict building down there or something, but
Well, there was it was the Loft gift shop,
Yeah.
and there was, I think it was, they had a rooming house there or something.
Yeah, the Durgan house was originally
Yeah,
In fact, someone told me that Hay stayed there while he was having his house built.
oh
On the
really?
Hay estate.
Huh.
In the Durgan house.
So but there wasn't any center of town or things like that. It was a simple farming community, scattered out through town. You know, you had South Newbury Post Office, you had the Newbury Post Office, you had the Mount Sunapee Post Office, and there was one in Blodgett Landing,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, you had all of these communities, but they really flourished from Mother's Day to Columbus Day, and
Yeah.
then they closed up. Nobody came up here in the winter. I mean, you go back and think. Now this was before my time, but the mountain didn't really open until '48.
Hmm.
So
That's when the winter business
that's
started.
when it started. Yeah. The summer business was always great. The tourist and the train coming through. I vaguely remember the train. I don't know when the train stopped.
Yeah, 50,
15,
55 or 56.
something
The
like
train
that.
stopped, yeah.
Yeah,
And then they did run it a couple of years just for tourists.
weekends.
But yeah, but,
Yeah. Well, that used to be the way the milk went to Boston. I mean,
Yeah.
Howard Eaton used to tell me that he took the train to Simon's High School.
yeah. So
Yeah.
did Wayne. So did everybody.
Everybody
here.
did, yeah.
Yeah.
They
And
go-
your great-grandfather's eggs used to go down by train.
Yeah.
Did they?
the eggs and milk.
Yeah.
They would, and the train would stop.
Plus ice way back.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. No, that's
That was-
beyond us.
Did the train went from here to Bradford, right? There was no stop in between.
They did stop sometimes, but no, there wasn't
There was
any
no
stop.
real stop.
there wasn't any official stop. They had what they called a flag stop.
Yes. Yeah.
If you put a flag out on, I guess they had an official type of thing, it would stop down there. But the train went from Claremont to Concord in the Newport.
Are there any special people you remember when you, as a young person, when you were growing up? Well, you remember Larry Bonner.
Oh yeah. They used to have horse races on the ice
Yes.
with a sulky, and there would be some pretty mean betting going on. They'd plow off a course, and Larry was into all kinds of things. Now Larry was married or living with Alice Lynn.
He married her.
Did he marry her?
Yeah.
He made an honest woman out of her?
Yep.
Or she
And he-
probably tried to make an honest man out of him.
Yeah, they were only married about 2 years, I think, when
Yeah.
he divorced her.
Well, they used to have all kinds of concerts and stuff, and this is before my time. I remember.
Yes, the Newbury Business Association, businessmen.
Was that it?
Yeah, they had concerts and the races.
Yeah. And they'd bring up, well, they had a lot of bands that would play at Dartmouth, big name bands, and they had to turn that into a 2-night gig, so they would have things here at the Rosemont, over in Claremont, or down here at Birch Grove and stuff like that. But yeah, and we had the Harbor Club, which was a men's group. We used to do bingo on Wednesday nights in the summertime, raise money for local
They also
causes.
played poker right in the big window of his marina
Oh,
when poker was illegal.
yeah, I never got into the poker games.
No, nobody ever took him to task for it.
But yeah, but he ran the marina and ran the motel and
Yeah.
had his place over in Sunapee Harbor. That's where Fenton's is now. And you went around and there was, you had to hop over the threshold between the inside building and the other one, because if you were on your skates and trying to go through, you'd catch it and you'd go flat on your backside. Yeah. But there were a lot of good people here. George Parker and Bob Vashel, Walt Crotto. I mean, start thinking of some of those names. I didn't take my Prevagen this morning, so I'm not doing too well on the memories, but
Oh,
a
I think
lot
you're
of
doing great.
wonderful people.
And you've already answered whether you were a member of a group, because you said that.
I was in the
Club.
Harbor Club. Well, I joined the fire department in 71, I think.
How old were you then?
I would have been 24. Yeah. And Walt Crotto was on there, and his father George.
And
Uncle.
Mike? Was Mike by
Mike,
then?
Mike was in there, yeah. So it was something, when I got out of college, I was working up here. I was working for either the Boston Globe or United Press, and so I lived up here and I covered New Hampshire. I think there are 3 towns or 4 towns that I haven't been in New Hampshire. They sent me all over the place taking pictures.
That was a great job.
Oh, it was a wonderful job. And I was footloose and fancy free and single, and, impress the girls, with my car and my cameras and all. It was a wonderful time.
Are you still a member of the fire department?
Yep.
Huh?
50, I guess it must have been 71, because 53 years I just got my certificate.
Wow. So the only one that's been longer, well, I guess Mike is actually retired now.
Mike did retire, yeah. So I am
the
longest serving member, yeah. I had a Model A Ford that I used to drive. That's when I started working in Boston. I used to drive it down to Boston every weekend.
Did it have a rumble seat?
It had a rumble seat, but it was what they called a poor man's coupe. It was a soft top. It didn't go down, but it looked like it did. So that's was called a sport coupe, and I used that all the time. We used it as a come on at the ski shows when we were down in Sunapee Harbor. We'd come down from the Ben Mere, honking the horn and everything else, come hit the brakes as we came onto the dock, and most of the time, all the time, the brakes held, but we were worried sometimes it wouldn't hold. You had 5 guys in that car that should only have had 2.
How long did it take you to go to Boston back then?
2.5 hours. It was just simple. You pull down 45, 50 miles an hour,
Yeah.
pull the hand throttle down, and just sit back, and away you went. It was great.
Not too much traffic, probably.
No. And that's why my folks decided to come up here, because my father said, I'm never going to get caught in that Cape Cod thing going over those bridges. And so they ended up talking to my uncle about buying one of his places, and the rest is history, as they say.
You had your own room in the house where you grew up?
Oh, yeah. I had my own room. My sister had hers.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful house. They bought that house from Jack Chandler. Jack Chandler owned it, yeah.
Oh,
This
I
is the
knew
one
Jack.
at Cressy Point?
Yeah.
I knew Jack very well.
Yeah, he was a state senator.
Yeah, for years and years.
Yeah. And Happy Jack. So, yeah. I can go on about all of those things. It was just a wonderful time to growing up. And, you started when you were a kid that was wearing shorts to school. And these weren't shorts. These were good flannel shorts with knee socks, and had to wear the whole thing. And then on Sundays we'd go to the what was the name of the hotel right there next to the Latches? Newport House, I guess, was it?
Yes.
We used to go there for chicken dinner on Sundays. That was a big one out. Len Perkins was the guy that owned the store, the clothing store.
Yeah, that's right.
And used to go to Kelly's Pharmacy, which was right there.
Yeah.
And everybody would come from New London, come to Dr. Green's. Now, you know what Dr. Green's is. Well, all the state stores had a green sign on them. So when people would say, especially the people from New London, I got an appointment with Dr. Green, can I get you a prescription? So there'd be one person that would go and pick up the orders for the day, make the run, and they go to Newport and pick it up. You know, New London was a dry town.
Oh, I didn't know.
New London was dry until, I think, even into the late 60s.
From the time of Prohibition?
Yeah.
It was
never
dry.
went back.
Wow.
And, you know, as kids, we went to George's Mills. We went to Potter Place, which was just over the line. Elkins, that side of Elkins. And you could get your beer there. And we used to get, may he rest in peace, but the guy that owned the store, the store on Blodgett Landing.
Oh,
It'll come back to me.
Yeah.
Al, was that Al Gregoire?
that could
Lucille and Al.
be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you could occasionally, if you weren't quite 21, you'd be able to get it from him. But if she was behind the counter, you couldn't. She would be.
Dan, it sounds like you worked the system, like you knew.
Oh, we learned. We all learned. I mean, but you know, it was a wonderful time. Nobody got hurt. We were all reasonably safe. And you know, you look back on it, a few beers, not going to bother anybody. It's not like the stuff you're dealing with today. You know, the drugs and that sort of stuff. It's scary. And we'd go out on the lake, we'd go out to the islands, and sit and have our beers, and we always cleaned up. I remember somebody saying, "Whose turn is it for the trash?" And we always took it off the island. Yeah. Anyway.
One of my questions is, do you have a sense of Newbury as a unique place? But I think you've already answered that one.
Well, yeah, Newbury the lake was a very unique place. Whether you were in Newbury or Sunapee,
Yeah, right.
we all got along very well, and we enjoyed ourselves. You know, I didn't have a summer job until the interstate came through, and then I worked on the interstate. I was called sloping the interstate. So after they graded it, I had a rake that was about this long, and you'd pull the stones down to the bottom. I didn't last very long on that job.
Was that a summer job?
That was a summer job. Yeah.
Awfully hot and awfully hard
Which
work.
part of the interstate, what stretch were you on?
It was between, I won't forget it, just between Bog Road and 103A. I guess it's right in that section.
Okay.
On the southbound side, on a pretty steep slope, and I guess I put in 2 or 3 weeks and my back was just killing me. I said, "Dad, I can't do this anymore." He said, "Well, you gotta find another job."
So what was the other job?
That's when I went down to Boston. I worked at the Boston Herald in the darkroom. So I was mixing chemicals and processing film for people. 60s.
Were you happy when the ski area went in? Or did it matter?
I didn't know it without the ski area. So I was happy that it gave me something to do on the weekends when I came up here, and that sort of thing. And people were really nice. There was a guy over in Newport at a pizza place in Goshen, Dave Bevilacca. and we would all go over to his place and have pizza and all.
Great pizza.
Yeah. God, think so.
Dan, do you remember when they put the gondolas on? Because I think that was in the 60s they started.
Yeah,
doing
they
that.
tried to turn it into more of a family-friendly lift as opposed to. And I'm trying to think of. I think that was a single chairlift. It might have been a double. And then they had the gondolas that they'd take off in the wintertime and put the chairs on because it was quicker. But I don't ever remember riding in the gondola. I remember seeing them.
Yeah.
Of course, they had to nearly stop it at the top to unload the
Oh yeah,
gondolas.
yeah.
And so, I mean, it did.
It got slowed down, and you couldn't get the skiers like you can when it was a running lift up there. But I remember how that expanded it. I almost think it was a single chair, and then they had the T-bar up at the top. They had a Palmer lift, and a couple of rope tows. I think I got my first season pass. I was 8, something like that. I still got a picture of it up there. That was, you know, you had the lake in the summer, and you had the mountain in the winter. I mean, for a young kid, it was the best of both worlds. So.
Did any of the wars affect you here while you were growing up?
The Vietnam War. I got called up, and I got rejected. I was 1Y because they told me my eyesight was bad. And I remember talking to the doctor. I said, "Doctor, I'm going to be a photographer. My eyes aren't bad." And he said, "Son, your eyes are bad." And I wasn't smart enough. I sort of fought him for a few minutes. And he said, "Take a walk." So, but I had a number, there were a bunch of people from around here that went over. They all made it, but I had 2 photographer friends. The guy at UPI in Philly, Kent Potter, and Ollie Noonan from the Boston Globe. They both taught me a lot of things about taking pictures, and they both died over there. Helicopter crashes.
And
So that's the way that we were removed until late 60s when I was off to college, and the fighting over the war, whether we were going to continue it or not. So
what about the moon landing? How did you feel about that?
That was pretty cool. That was very cool. I'm sort of a pessimist, and I thought, there's no way they went up there on the moon. This is a Disney put on, and I just couldn't believe it. It took me a long time to believe that somebody went like that all the way to the moon. I mean, here I am, 32 years old. I was 69. And just still, I had trouble thinking it was really happening. But it was very cool.
Did you watch it from up here?
Yeah.
Through the snow on your TV, or did you actually have reception?
It probably was fine because we watched it. And
We watched it, yeah, and I think Channel 9 was, well, that was about all you could get.
Yeah.
We had those rabbit ears. Well, and then we put in a thing that turned the antenna up on the roof.
Yeah, an antenna.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we had an antenna, but you could control
Yes,
where the
right,
antenna
which
was.
way it went.
Yeah.
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 What about the COVID epidemic? Did that affect you?
No.
No, not really.
I mean, it did affect me. I was in the legislature, and God, we had the opening session in the legislature, November, something like that, when we got together down there. I was my first term in the legislature, and Dick Hinch came down with COVID and he died.
Oh.
Was the Speaker of the House. And I came home and said to Bev, he said, well, we didn't know he had COVID. He got very sick, and 3 or 4 days later he died. And I said, you know, I was in the food line with this guy. And she says, you go wash your hands right now. And, you know, this is 3 days later. If you don't have it now.
Can you talk a little bit about your decision to go into the legislature and a little bit just about your experience there? Or you don't have to?
No, I am happy to. I've always been one to put in public service. At one point I said, way back, I'd like to be governor, but I never got there. But
you never tried to be
governor. No,
governor.
I didn't try. I knew where I was happy. I mean, I did the planning board. I did the zoning board. Got elected on the fire department, and I was deputy chief on the fire department. Worked my way up, and as part of the process, I got onto the school board. I was in the school board in '73 when I first got married. I've been married twice. First time was sort of a trial run, 3 years, and it didn't work, so. But then I met Beverly, and it's worked now for 42 years. Gotta think about which one it is. But it's been over 40 years. But then when I went back to the school board, I really enjoyed that. And I think I put in 15 years in the school board. 10 of them was as chairman. And both Bev and I believe in term limits. And I probably pushed the school board a little further than I should have. But she did library trustee. I think she did 9 years on that. She was the one that built the first edition on that. And when I got through my time on the school board, I said, what am I going to do? And that's when I ran for the legislature. It was, I guess, a natural progression. I like to find ways to accommodate everybody. I'm not a my way or the highway. Some people might think I am, but I like to see a problem, figure out a solution, and then get everybody behind it and go. It was like the meeting house. You know, I saw a problem. I drove by that meeting house for years on end, and it was falling apart. And the people that were the trustees, the Messer family, and Chuck Kennedy, they were doing all they could to keep it going, but they needed some money. I mean, you know, to paint that building in today's dollars is probably $75,000 or $100,000. So I knew Bill Weiler, and I don't know where Bill and I came together. Maybe our love for some history and all. I said, Bill, we got to do something about this building. It's going to fall in if we don't do it. And I put an ad in the shopper. I don't know if you've ever heard the story.
I haven't heard it.
Well, I put an ad in, 16th of a page or something. If you're interested in preserving the meeting house, the center meeting house, we will be holding a meeting. And I think we were in the selectman's office. And we had 15 people show up. And I said, okay, we got to figure out how to put this back together. And Margie Weiler, well, we had to revamp the board because Tracy Messer was living out of town. His family was getting along in years, and they just didn't have any ability to raise what needed to be raised. And that's when the L-chip came in. I said, let's see if we can get some grants, and maybe for $300,000 or $400,000 we can rebuild this building. Well, about 4 times that, about $1.5 million when we got all through with it. But we had an absolutely wonderful bunch of people. Barbara Stewart and the Whalens, as I say, the Weilers, and we all pitched in. Somebody became, and Pat Sherman got involved as architecture and restoration, and I guess Gloria Whalen was doing publicity. And we put together a group of people. We went out and we raised 2 L-chip grants for a couple of $100,000 each, 100,000 each. And the town, I went to the town and said, we would like to have you contribute to this. And they said, well, if you raise X, we'll give you $100,000. And that was a tough vote to get through town. But as I say, I like to figure out where we had to go and see if I could work with people to get them enthusiastic and support it. And that's the way, you know, I mean, as chairman of the school board, we put 4 kindergartens together. Because that's when the state was giving you half the money for the daily cost of a kindergarten education. And we knew that you had to have kindergarten if you're going to have a productive school system. So what else do you do? Figure out a way to do it, and off we went. We built Bradford, we built Warner. That's when Newbury split, when the Bradford School was built. Used to have grades 4 and 5 up here, and 1, 2, and 3 were in Bradford. And Bev used to come down, and she was an old school teacher, a young school teacher, cute school teacher. So, yeah.
So how many years were you in the legislature?
8 years, 4
8
terms. Wow. And I miss it, but at times I don't miss it. It's become, people today, and I think society in general, are more interested in what's in it for them, as opposed to what is good for the community or the state or whatever. And that's when I started to say, I don't think I'm going to run again. You know, I loved working with people, but people were somewhat selfish. So I said, I'm not going to run again.
I'm sure your wife was relieved.
No, she was probably more concerned than I was. What the hell are you going to do with yourself now? But we separate that. She and I did my politics and she did her thing.
Yeah.
When she was working on the library, I did what I could to help her on that. She was president of the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen for 8 or 10 years.
And what was her craft?
She wasn't a craftsman. She was an art appreciator. Somebody that would put some money into the till. But she knew how to organize things. She was a great organizer. And she got off about 5 or 7 years ago, and they just called her and she's back on the board again. So we, you know, it's been such a wonderful community, and it's a wonderful state, by and large. But you got to give back to it. You can't just be sucking off of. Let me rephrase that.
I was wondering where that was going to go.
You got to be willing to give back as much as you want to take. And I wish I could convince people that if you want something for the good of the community, and that means whatever it is, Newbury or the state or the county, you got to pay for it. There's no free lunch. And that's what's driving me crazy down there in Concord. They want to be a low-tax state. But New Hampshire used to win awards for their snow removal, state plowing of the interstates. Now nobody compares them to anybody. So, anyway.
Are there any local stories or legends that you remember? Or traditions or gatherings that are important or memorable to you?
I probably should have read this thing beforehand and thought about it. Well, always the July 4th parade with the kids in it. Would put the whole family in the Model A, and that's the same Model A that I was driving back and forth to Boston 50 years ago.
Do you still have it?
Still have it, yep. It's 96 years old. It's 1929. And I had it restored twice. So, but it's still running. It's running absolutely beautifully. I don't know.
Do you enjoy Old Home Day?
Not yes and no. I mean, I love people getting together. It's become a commercial venture. You know, we used to have a chicken barbecue in the summer. And, you know, the fire department would put it on and people would partake in it. And it wasn't that giving somebody an opportunity to make money. It was a wonderful time to get together with people in town. So I'm not a big fan of it. I mean, I'm not going to say no to it, but I ride my bicycle in the Prouty, the Norris Cotton Cancer fundraiser. So I'm not here for Old Home Day much of the time. I love riding my bicycle.
And you still do that?
Still doing it, yeah. Although I will admit that I have got an electric bike now.
Good for you.
Some of the hills coming up Ledge Hill is a challenge.
Yeah. It's even a challenge to push a bicycle up Ledge Hill.
Yeah, that's probably true too. I mean, you know, you think about that. What was her name? Is her name? Oh, it's Pat Dugdale. I'm always out walking.
That woman that was walking like 10 miles.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
She's still walking.
Is she still doing it?
Yeah.
She was on her deathbed a little while ago, and now she's back walking again.
Yeah. Well, I saw her. I was going someplace, and I saw her hunched over the guardrail. And I just said, so I called up Brad, and I said, Brad, somebody ought to go take a look at Pat. And he called me back a few minutes later. Oh, she just had to stop and take a rest.
Yeah.
So, but that's what Newbury was like. You know, if somebody was in trouble, he called.
Yeah.
So.
Is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about?
I'd really like to think about it. I'd take a second session with you at some time, because this has really been wonderful about what's going on here.
I said the same thing after I got through, a couple days. I thought, I didn't mention
this and I didn't mention that, yeah. But No, it's been a wonderful experience growing up. I mean, I remember Arthur Larson. I remember Biff Rainey.
Oh, yes. Oh, wasn't
He-
Biff wonderful?
He was the local constable.
And all the kids would come to him and find out where the party was that night.
Right. Yeah. Oh God, we went to some parties where we shouldn't have been out driving that night. So much snow and all. But we had some wonderful times. No, I don't know where else I can.
Anything you'd like to say about life now to future generations? Because who knows who's going to be seeing this in the future?
Well, I think you got to just use your head, you know, and enjoy life. Go out there and do it, but do it with smarts. I'm thinking about the age of it as a teenager and all. But I guess the other thing I would say is you got to give back to your community. Don't try to cut out. You've got to pay for those things that we should pay for. And that's the biggest thing that I have with the legislature. They don't want to have taxes, reduce the taxes. Well, that's fine, but somebody's got to pay for education. Somebody's got to pay for the highway and the school system and all of the other things. And I mean, I'm not saying to just open up your wallet. Do it with some common sense, but pay for it. So, I don't know. Hasn't your battery gone dead, Leah?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Well, my pleasure. And if there's anything else, if you have any questions, specific, you know.
Well, if he thinks of something later on, we can do
We
another
can do part 2.
session, right?
How many of these are you doing?
We haven't set a limit. I think our sense, do you want to stop the recording? Our sense is that